today I will be counting down my top 5 most wanted houses for the event of Halloween Horror Nights. Now, some of these I've been wanting for a few weeks, just thought of them a few weeks ago. And others, like my number 1 pick, which I won't spoil, I have been wanting for years to come to the event. Probably even before I started going to Halloween Horror Nights, I was thinking of this as a house to walk through. So with that being said, let's jump right into the top 5. For my number 5, I have chosen Carrie. Now, Carrie is a strong possibility, and I am not sure why it has not been speculated in the past because of the studio. MGM has produced films such as Killer Clowns from Outer Space and the most recent Poltergeist, which have both been featured at Halloween Horror Nights. And I think it has a strong possibility of coming to the event in the future years. And I know the film doesn't have a lot, like a variety of film sets and, characters. But I think Horror Nights is known for taking properties that we weren't sure if they could do it, and they do it incredibly. For example, The Exorcist, how it was mostly, 1 bedroom, 1 girl, but they take that property and they made so many unique scenes with it. So I think they could do the same with Carrie. I'm honestly just such a big fan of the film, and I think they could adapt it incredibly. Now, for my number 4 pick, I might get some confusion, and the only reason for that is that it's just such a new film, but hear me out on this one. I think it has incredible potential to be adapted into a house, as there's a lot of sets, a lot of locations, a lot of characters, and I think it's so new that they don't want to adapt it just quite yet, but I think in the coming years, this would be a great property to adapt, and that is Midsummer. Now, the studio A24 is a relatively new studio, and I don't know their ties with Halloween Horror Nights and Universal because we have had nothing of the sorts yet. They've produced films such as Hereditary, another Ari Aster film, and multiple other horror films, but I think Midsummer would be the best to adapt. There are some studios that we see, like 20th Century Fox, since they're owned by Disney. We know that nothing from them is ever going to come to the event again. But A24, I am unsure of. I think it has a strong possibility to come if the connections are great and A24 is totally in to do it. But this one doesn't have a great possibility of coming, but I think it would be a very strong house if they did it. My number 3 house, this is one that I think was going to come to the event one year, but got pulled last minute because the studio in charge, which is Warner Brothers, as we know as Horror Nights fans, is very spotty, and we never know if we're going to get a Warner Brothers house or not, because they always approve some houses and then they get pulled out last minute. This year, Beetlejuice is expected to come. I think that has to do with more of like a theme park rights rather than a Horror Nights rights aspect, but never count on Warner Brothers properties for Horror Nights, and that is The Conjuring. I would love for this house to happen. I love the movie. Love The Conjuring 2. Some of the spin-offs are questionable, but I think the original Conjuring film and maybe a couple other characters from, the spin-off franchises, I think they would make an amazing house. Universal does great with supernatural or, ghost demon house. I think this would fit perfectly into it. I think the facade would be incredible. They could incorporate the noose hanging from the tree in the poster. Honestly, I would be so happy if this came to the event, but I understand with Warner Brothers' Horror Made Here event, which I think is canceled this year. Total speculation, not sure. I have to research that. I know they aren't letting Warner Brothers properties go to the event since they have their own horror event, but I've heard that Horror Made Here isn't doing so well and they might just shut it down completely. So maybe that means we could get it in the future, but that's the definition of a wish list. That's the most wish list one out of all. Now, my number 2 house is kind of like an oddball like Midsummer, but I actually think with the right amount of support, it could have a chance to come to the event as kind of a cult status movie like Trick or Treat or Ash vs. Evil Dead. And that is You're Next. It's a 2013 horror film. It is one of my favorite modern horror films ever, mainly because I'm a big fan of the slasher genre. So you, first of all, go check it out if you haven't seen it. It's an incredible movie. But it was not that popular when it was released August 23rd, 2013. It made some money at the box office, not a lot. It's talked about a lot, but it's just not, it's hardly even reached cult status yet. But I love the film so much. I think the masks in the movie are creepy, and there's a lot of diversity in the masks. And I think they could recreate the house well. Amazing facade. There's a lot of different scenes. They go to a neighbor's house. Like, there's a lot of different areas you could build for a Halloween Horror Nights house. And I think this movie is right up their alley because I think they do slasher genre as well. And I think they do just like building facades for houses in horror movies. I think they do that incredible too. So I would love for this movie to come to the event. Before we get to our number one, I want to unveil some honorable mentions. These aren't honorable mentions for number one, but just honorable mentions for the top 5 that didn't make it, but I still think would be great mazes. These include Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. I understand Goosebumps is on a lot of people's wish list, but I understand what John Murdy said when he was like, you know, the target audience is kind of like my 7-year-old, and he was like, I don't know if that's the right target audience. Scary Stories is kind of like Goosebumps, but I think it's built up a notch, and there's a new film released a couple years ago, or even last year. I didn't look that up. But while it's more of like a kid's horror movie, has a lot of darker sets and a lot of cool characters that they could make scary. I think it would be a great house. I would also welcome Goosebumps. Another honorable mention is A Quiet Place, again with Paramount. I think overall A Quiet Place could be a really cool maze. Like if you remember Graveyard Games from last year, they had that cool room where you walk in, it's pitch black and you hear the voices around you. Not saying that exact technology they'll use, but I think after we saw that technology, we can see they could do a lot of cool things with The Quiet Place, such as guest activated triggers if they're walking, or if someone screams and that sets off something, you're trying to be quiet through one section of the house. I think they could do a lot with it. Another one, Shaun of the Dead, I think would be great. The Ring, I'm surprised they haven't done this one yet. A Chucky full maze, and last but not least, for honorable mentions, Creature from the Black Lagoon. I think they did it in the Universal Monsters maze, but they kind of reused props from Scary Tales. I think making the boat and the caves, and I think he would make an amazing house. Okay, here we are. My number one most wished, everything you can think of house. This is also my favorite horror film of all time, and favorite film of all time. So it's kind of obvious to why I wanted to come to the event, but we have never seen this movie at the event, and it was supposed to come in 2015, and it never came, and that is Scream. I love the Scream franchise. Obviously, there are some questionable entries, but overall, the first 2 are solid. I love Scream 4. I think Ghostface is just so iconic, and I can't believe he hasn't been featured at the event yet. I understand it's due to rights. I know at Halloween Horror Nights Hollywood, they had the Terror Tram one year when Scream 4 was coming out, but I want to see a full house. Now, in 2015, a little background, they were supposed to have this at the event. They actually filmed a commercial, and I'll leave the link down below to an unused commercial because they had to edit Ghostface out. And they scrapped it last minute, something with the rights, and the Purge house took it over. And when you were walking through the Purge house, if you remember, you can see bedrooms, and it was like taking place inside, and everyone was a little confused. That's because some of it was the Scream props they had in the house. Like, they had built it, and it's not on the shirt, the Purge, because they had to take off Scream from all the shirts, and they just didn't add the Purge again. So it was a whole mess there, but the reason I think it has potential to come in the next coming years is because Paramount is releasing Scream 5. Now, this is major news. They're partnering with Spyglass Media. Paramount properties are honestly very welcomed. I haven't seen any problems with Paramount. No rights issues, except with Friday the 13th, but I think that's more with the screenwriter rather than Paramount the studio. So I think overall it has strong potential to come in the future, and I really hope it does. With that being said, thank you very much for watching. This is a very new channel, so any support helps. This has been another Theme Park Hut video, and let's hope it's not the last.